So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto and Azula Got Harem, so let's start the series. A boy sits up and moans, "Ugh, haven't taken a hit like that since that time I let Suheim hit me with a punch when I made her younger and let her test her strength." His eyes opened to reveal a menacing void of colors on a clear floor. When he got up, he showed that he was a fair 6 feet 0 inches and that his muscles were packed, giving him the figure of a swimmer. His long red hair reached his back, spiking out, and he had a bang covering his left eye, which revealed his right eye was royal purple, and his cheeks had 6 whisker marks. A groan next to him caused him to turn around and see a woman with equally disheveled red and blonde hair and a purple diamond on her forehead. Her kimono top was tattered, barely holding on with her impressive bust and her lean, taut frame, and her pants were tattered, barely covering her modesty. He had his shirt destroyed and his pants in no better shape, exposing his six-pack. "Suheim, you okay?" he asked, kneeling in front of her as he approached. Sitting upright, she gazed at the amethyst pool she had long adored. Anchich Naruto koi. What happened? Me and the other Kage helped you fight Madara after Sasuke gave you his Jujutsu, causing them to mutate your Rinnegan and you beat it and the Jubi, but I can't remember what happened after, she said. Your guess is as good as mine. I used a seal to seal away the Jubi and then you came checking me over seeing if I was well and then nothing with us in some void with nothing going on for miles. I don't even sense anyone's chakra, so I'd say it's safe to assume that we're the only ones here, he said as he helped her stand. Before they heard a smack, the two became uncomfortable as a female voice commented, "About time they woke up, I was getting bored watching 2 sleeping humans for the past 100 years. Another female voice reprimanded the first in a playful manner, saying, "Baka, don't scare Naruto-kun and Tsunade-chan, they're in a new place and don't even know what happened. Besides, you still have a little drool hanging from your lip from staring at Naruto-kun's muscles." A third replied, "Well, let's not keep them in suspense, sisters, because the two seem to be losing their patience and would attack if someone doesn't do something." The 3 phased into being as 3 stunning women appeared. With a deep tan similar to most Kumo residents and a few apparent scars, the first was as tall as Naruto, if not a few inches shorter. She wore a black kimono with a crimson lining and a blue obi tied around her waist, with the neck descending between her amazing bust. Her hair was lighter than her eyes and wore in a ponytail that reached her back. Her eyes were a fiery chocolate brown that maintained a chilly demeanor. The second was 5 feet 9 inches, suntanned, and had blonde hair that reached past her hips. Her blonde hair framed her heart-shaped face, which had a kind, maternal smile, and her sky-blue eyes shone. Like her sister, she donned a kimono, but this time it was white with a black lining and a gray obi tied around her waist, revealing her ample curves and bust. The final one, who was between the two in height, had midnight black hair that reached between her shoulder blades, a pale skin, and dark blue eyes. She had a black obi tied around her waist and was dressed in a crimson, ragged kimono. Despite having a somewhat lesser chest and curves than her sisters, many women still wanted her. "Who are you?" Tsunade inquired, disregarding her attire and assuming a posture in case they were hostile, while Naruto stood prepared to respond, sensing the tremendous energy rolling off them to the point where it was on par with the Jubi, if not larger than it. Now no need to be so defensive, you two, me and my sisters brought you here after you defeated Madara and the Jubi after Naruto-kun here absorbed the others. He in a sense made himself into a Biju, or more specifically another Jubi, just without the tails, but your power was going out of control and would have destroyed the planet due to the massive strain your coils were going through, the third woman said, causing the 2 shinobi's eyes to broaden. The three women began nodding at Tsunade as they all turned to face Naruto, who had gradually come to the same conclusion. Naruto gulped, unaware of how close he was to ascending like a superpowered Baijidama, when the first woman said, "That's right, Naruto-kun, your unnaturally high luck was the only thing keeping you from turning the two of you and the planet into space debris. I mean literally, you were throwing around into S-rank jutsu with your unstable coils, you were a proverbial ticking time bomb." She pounded on his head in a humorous manner, making the three women who were watching perspire. "Baka! How many times do I tell you to be careful, but no, you can't help but be crazy and do something reckless. Why can't you ever just listen to me when I say these things?" she said. As they rose up again, the first woman added, "As hilarious as this is, we have some important matters to discuss, you Naruto-kun Tsunade-chan." This caused the enraged Senju to soften her strikes. "Now, there are two reasons we brought you both here. The first is that you, Naruto-kun, fulfilled your destiny as the child of prophecy and saved the elemental nations, even though all the souls died and went to their respective domains. In time, the world will reset itself, and it is doing so as we speak, as centuries have passed, as life has rebuilt itself from the bottom up. The second stated that the world had indeed started to rebuild itself, with men and women alike being divided by nations and performing tasks that the ninja in their world would have fainted. Excuse me, but not to sound like I'm making this about us, but why are Naruto and I here? I mean, it's good that the world is growing again, but we still don't see what this has to do with us. And you still haven't told us who you are," she stated as Naruto nodded. While Tsunade was dancing around whooping about women being the most powerful beings in the world, Kami said, "We were getting to that. We'll answer your second question first, since I am Kami and these are my sisters Yami and Shinigami." Naruto raised an eyebrow and nodded, understanding that women were the truly powerful beings. He laughed, loving this aspect of her. After revealing that Naruto was three goddesses engaged, Yami said, "Now as for the second, the reason we brought the two of you here is because not only because Naruto-kun is our mate as chosen by the original Kami before he perished, with all of us taking over his respective roles, we need your help one more time." The two gave Yami a startled look, but they didn't argue because it would be useless when they got what they wanted. As is always the case, Tsunade nodded when he said, "So, what do you need our help with?" Another maniac trying to control the world with him, perverting it into his own image with him as the absolute leader, as all others bowed at his supposed might. They agreed with Shinigami that, "Yes, you see Naruto-koi, the world has changed over the time you've slept, which up here isn't long, at the minimum a couple of days, a week at the most. Here there is a being known as the Avatar who acts as a bridge between the realm of the living and the spirit world, bringing balance. He masters all four elements to do this." Pointing to the screen, they displayed multiple individuals performing the same action. Their eyes and perhaps some body insignia glowed as they accomplished incredible feats, not particularly remarkable, mind you, but you get the idea. She said, "This avatar is going to need help mastering the four elements while traveling to stop the Fire Nation from taking over the world. You two are to assist them when he arises from his frozen slumber. But for you two, we need you two to do something else." While displaying two women, one was in prison and appeared to have lost all sanity due to her father's attempts to mold her into his image in an effort to please him, and her mother's departure after her brother ascended the throne in an effort to continue the war. And the other was a blind woman who had a terrible life, unable to enjoy it because her parents were always watching over her and keeping her on a tight leash like a delicate doll. She was forced to marry someone she didn't love in order to continue her family line. We need you two to help them and assist them to reaching a better outcome. The two of you are capable of this, so Naruto, you'll be going with the princess of the Fire Nation to help her turn her fate from this. While you Tsunade help Toph Bei Fong, so when the two of reunite given time you can assist her regain her sight, Shinigami said as the two of them nodded to them out. As the three goddesses shrugged, Tsunade said, but how are we going to fight? Really, we don't know their arts, let alone their culture or their history. I don't think we'd last long if the people saw the fact that we didn't know the basics of their culture or their skills. Naruto nodded. And that's why we're going to train you too, since Naruto has the Jubigan, the perfect fusion of the three legendary Dijitsu. You can use the elements like the Avatar, although they are all more powerful. Your fire, wind, and water affinity are the strongest by far, but it's best if you don't use those in the Fire Nation unless absolutely necessary without a believable excuse. Since the Fire Nation dislikes the Water Tribe since they are opposites and the Air Nomads have been exterminated except for the current Avatar, who is in stasis, Kami added, you Tsunade have an earth and water affinity, and he nodded. Now there is also something you should know, Naruto-kun, since your father used the Shiki Fuin on you, sealing the Kurama into you, gained the access of an old Uzumaki bloodline that was lost since their extermination, she added while causing both humans to glance at her. Tsunade questioned, what bloodline? Because, as far as she and Naruto knew, the only bloodlines the Uzumaki possessed were their mastery of Kenjutsu, their knowledge of seals, their ability to suppress a Biju by using the chakra chains and the Rinnegan, and their longevity, which she regained when Naruto mated with her and helped her Uzumaki genes come to the fore. You and Naruto both hold a portion of Shini-chan's soul that had grown tremendously over the years, a more potent energy known as Reisha, otherwise known as spirit energy, which all Uzumaki could use before their mass destruction. The other half of chakra you use to fight like the humans now use chi, the other half to perform their bending, which we will be teaching you while Shini-chan teaches the both of you what Ryatsu can allow you to perform, since she's better at it than Kami and I. Yami laughed and nodded to both of them. The two nodded when Yami remarked, it will be a while before you leave, so we'll have plenty of time to help you two learn everything necessary. Summary. A little less than a century has passed since they trained to be ready for their duty to assist the two. Tsunade is being sent to Toph, who Kami and the others claim can help her regain her sight with her medical expertise, and later with Naruto's help through his creations of everything. Meanwhile, Naruto is being sent to the Fire Princess Azula, who the goddesses claim can prevent her from descending into darkness with his caring nature and personality. Naruto and Tsunade's abilities advanced significantly as a result of the three goddesses. Both Tsunade, who possessed the ability to control both water and earth, and Naruto perfected their bending techniques. Additionally, they learned about Reisha and Ryatsu, which enable them to deploy unique skills known as Kido. When they were not exercising, they were studying the history of the four nations, and it looked as though neither the elemental nations nor any of the earlier animals that lived there were mentioned at all, as though the towns that were there were secret and unknowable to humanity. The two acknowledged that the world was undoubtedly safer without them knowing about chakra once again, but they also understood that it was still conceivable for someone to have learned about the power they once wielded and understood how to use it sparingly and to support the people they were tasked with helping. Naruto had a close relationship with the original Jubi during their time in Limbo, which increased his power tremendously as his body adapted to the power spike. Everyone knew that you would be lucky to survive if he struck you, but his muscles were compressed, giving him the physique of a light swimmer. At the moment, Naruto and Tsunade had both been reduced to the age of children, perhaps no more than 6 or 7, so he questioned, so we're leaving now? With a bang held in place by a crimson bandage and another bang sweeping over his now grayish royal purple eye, revealing the other, Naruto's hair had deepened to midnight black with red streaks that reached his lower upper back. Both bangs were as white as snow. He chose to wear bandages in place of shoes and wore what the majority of Fire Nation kids wore, black shorts and a red top underneath an open black vest with gold detailing. He had multiple pouches on his belt that held his shuriken and kunai, as well as multiple scrolls that held his weapons. Aside from her haircut, which was a flawless blend of red and blonde, Tsunade had also changed, appearing a lot like she had in the academy. She was dressed in earth-toned clothing, which was the norm for the Earth Kingdom. Black shorts, a pair of loose-fitting deep green shorts, a light green vest over a deep brown short-sleeved blouse, and forest green shoes that resemble slippers. She possessed multiple sizable pouches to store her supplies and seals to store scrolls and weapons, primarily shinobi standard and useful medical supplies, just like Naruto. The three goddesses nodded as two portals appeared, one in an alley outside the village where Toph's family lived and the other in the heart of a forest near the capital of the Fire Nation. As he discovered over time that the goddess of life had a kinky side, Kami said, "That's right, but don't worry Naruto-kun. We'll see you two soon, but with your stamina we'd advise you get a couple of mates because you're going to have stamina so immense the amount you had before makes a civilian by comparison. Who knows, maybe Toph and Azula would join." Naruto's eye twitched as Kami said, "That's right, but don't worry Naruto-kun, we'll see you both soon but with your stamina." After kissing the three on the lips and then Tsunade, he sighed without offering a counterargument. The two leaped through the portals as they closed. After a while Yami asked, "Do you think we should have told them that the location the portal shows isn't always exact to where they land?" "They'll figure that out," was Shinigami's response when her two sisters shrugged and fell silent. After glancing at Shinigami, the other two gods simultaneously exclaimed, "You're a bitch, you know that?" In the country of fire, Splash Naruto wept as he swam to shore, clutching his stomach. "HHH landed on my stomach, son of a bitch." He complained as he used his water bending to get the water out of his clothes, saying, "Oh, when I see those three again they are going to get it big time." "Oh well, I just hope Tsunade had an easier landing and is at least close to Toph's location." He sighed as he walked into the forest. "Where the hell is the fire capital? That's where Azula is," he said. Alongside Tsunade, all of the animals heard a loud thud as dust blocked their view, followed by groaning as Tsunade stood up and brushed twigs and dust from her hair. "Kaya! Something fat get in my way." Tsunade looked around and saw that she was just outside past the Bei Fong residence. "I am so giving those bitches an ass whooping when I see them again. Ugh, I just hope Naruto-koi had an easier landing," she thought to herself. Before she heard a scream and ran to the scene, she mumbled, "Well, at least they put me in the right place." She saw a girl with milky green eyes being attacked, leading her to earth-bend the ground beneath them as they were sucked in up to their skulls. The girl turned her head in response to Tsunade's statement, "You know boys, I would think your mothers taught you better than to attack someone who can't even see it coming, let alone someone who can't fight back." The woman smirked as one man exclaimed, "Who the hell are you, bitch?" The others snarled at the idea of a child speaking down to them when she continued, "My name is Tsunade Uzumaki Senju, and I would think you had more common sense than to lay your hands on women." Before the area was engulfed in murderous intent, the first man exclaimed, "Let us out of here flat chest so we can teach both you and the blind brat a lesson." This caused everyone to turn to face Tsunade, who exuded a sense of death. As she marched towards the three men, she said eerily, "Flat chest, he, someone wants to die." Before the alleyway was filled with screaming, the blind lad silently wondered who this enigmatic woman was. After several months, "Come on, Naruto, Tai Lee and Mai are going to school." Naruto heard a moaning sound as he sat on his bed after putting on his school clothes. Just over 2 months have passed since Naruto arrived in the capital of the Fire Nation and rescued Azula from a bandit who attempted to capture her. After realizing that her uncle Iroh was an orphan, Azula and her mother adopted him into the family, which is something her family is grateful for. Naruto tightened the bandages on his feet and muttered, all right, keep your panties on." He didn't like the shoes here because they were rigid and uncomfortable, and they didn't give him much room. If he had to wear shoes, he would wear sandals or his bandaged shoes, which felt constricting. The princess of the Fire Nation couldn't help but blush as the door slid open from the opposite side. Since Naruto treated her and her two friends like children who just wanted to have fun and not like royalty, the young heiress, who had been friends with him for months, couldn't help but fall in love with him. Tai Li exclaimed with excitement, "Hiya Foxy," and Naruto laughed. She has a tendency to be a bit of an airhead and has always been vivacious. Because of her amazing flexibility and balance, her ability to use a fighting style to temporarily block a bender's chi or even knock them out, and her unusual ability to see their aura, he wonders if she has a diluted mutation of the Byakugan. She frequently performs as an acrobat and gymnast at the circus. Mai said, "Hey," as stoically as usual. Because her parents have a talkative attitude, she has never been the kind to express herself and isn't particularly good with emotions. Although Naruto has been working with her on that, he has discovered that Mai has a talent for throwing weapons. She discovered this when she accidentally clipped a fly's wings with a needle, and she became so fascinated by it that she now always carries weapons with her, even in school, because of her long sleeves. Naruto made the three of them laugh when he said, "Hey girls, ready to go?" Although I may just fall asleep listening to the teacher drone on like usual. He had a photographic memory and knew every detail, but he was incredibly lazy and wouldn't do anything unless he was interested in it. To everyone's surprise, he received the highest scores in the academy. As they walked across the country to the academy, Azula, Mai, and Tai Li moved closer to him because he was the most sought after of the girls their age because of his air of authority and power that demanded respect. "I still don't understand how you can sleep through class without the teacher noticing and still do so well as to get perfect scores if you don't study," Azula said, her friends nodding. Several nobles tried to get their daughters to marry him, but he wasn't particularly interested in any of them because he was more interested in his ability to bend and control fire, which made him famous because it was hotter than any flame and lasted longer. Naruto sighed as they entered the classroom and sat between Tai Li and Mai, with Azula in front of him. They began the day by taking the Fire Nation oath. As he interrupted the teacher's lecture about the glories of the Fire countries, including the genocide of the air nomads, Naruto pondered, "I wonder when things are going to get interesting." After several months, at the Fire Nation arena, in the first place, how did I become up embroiled in this, standing in front of Azula's brother and Ozai's younger twin, Naruto pondered. Zuko, the Fire Nation's prince. Both Zuko and Naruto were now standing back to back across from one another, both of them wearing only shorts, in front of thousands of Fire Nation residents. Flashback from the previous month. As he often did when training with Iroh, Naruto had been practicing his bending with Azula in the woodland training grounds while also assisting Mai and Tai Li with their combat techniques. He was always fascinated by how quickly those three got better while working with him. Once having a very rigid fighting style, Tai Li now uses her innate flexibility and reflexes to bend at incredible angles while blocking someone's chi, preventing them from bending. This is a terrifying talent for those who just rely on her bending. In order to hold a target down after being hit, Mai started learning about various long-range weaponry and toxins. She can strike almost any target she sees, but it took some effort. She is also gradually developing a close combat style that suits her, which is a tedious process, but she is getting better. As much as he despises the term, Azula is now a top-tier prodigy. She had amazing improvisational skills and amazing flexibility. She needed some time to learn that her father's statements aren't always true. Her father revealed his true nature when her mother left a while ago, saying he didn't care for his daughter because she was too much like her mother, despite the fact that she was the best fire bender in the country, second only to him, and third only to Iroh. Following that, her father essentially made an effort to express how unhappy he was to be around her. Since Ozai believed that an orphan and a fire-bender failure who was unable to take over Omashu's training after the accident was a brilliant idea because failures should stick together, Naruto and Iroh took to teaching her how to bend. He attempted to keep her under his control by convincing her that following his instructions would restore her noble honor and win back his love. As he joined Tai Li and Mai by the lake, Naruto said, "Great job, Azula. Take a 5 and relax. You've deserved it. Tomorrow, we'll work on the more advanced moves later. Did you decide on what weapon you take up on? I mean, you're a good close combat fighter and can fight without your bending, but if someone's got a weapon it would be good to know something." Naruto wore his hair in a ponytail. A big flame approached them, but Naruto annihilated it before hurling a black fireball at the person who launched it. "I was thinking either knives or a sword of some kind," she remarked, receiving a nod without being forced into anything. As Azula and the others watched her brother Zuko enter from the forest with a sneer, Naruto grinned and remarked, My Zuzu, it's so pitiful of you to attack someone when they're not looking. It makes me wonder if you're some thug instead of a prince." Naruto rolled his eyes at his snarky statement, "I don't have to say anything to a moneyless peasant like you, I just wanted to see how my darling sister is doing." Like his father, Zuko was always conceited, cunning, and heartless. His mother's disapproval of the fact that he was adopting his father's traits while Azula received all the love didn't help either. As Zuko roared, Naruto was irritated and replied, "That may be true, but I do. I thought it was beneath royalty to attack someone when their guard is down. You know, honor of the crown and all that." Zuko and Naruto were not on the same page. As he followed in his father's footsteps, Zuko made continual attempts to denigrate Azula and make her feel weak, which Naruto didn't appreciate because he already knew he was too far gone to be saved. He remarked condescendingly, "Hey, you think you better than me, trash," not realizing that Naruto was considerably superior to him. Standing directly in front of Zuko, Naruto grinned and stated, "I don't think Zuko, I know I am far better than you by leagues in fact." Zuko frowned and continued, "If that's what you think, I challenge you to an Agni Kai in a week." Zuko nodded and turned away in the trees as Naruto snorted, "A week, hell, I'll give you a month so you can come up with a valid enough excuse to daddy on why you lost." As Mai and Tai Li wondered the same thing, Azula exclaimed, "Naruto, are you insane?" believing her brother would harm him and receiving an eye roll from Naruto. "Azula, your uncle and I have been training you and I'm better than him who is better than your father. I have little to no doubt I can win against some spoiled brat who is barely better than normal firebenders," Naruto confidently stated. "I just hope you know what you're doing, Naruto," Mai remarked in private, hoping he would win because Zuko has been a jerk for years, disparaging her family, and she needs that youngster to learn humility. Returning to the stadium, as they turned to face one another, Naruto thought, "Oh right, that's how I ended up here." He stood up, just like Zuko did, schooling his features to reflect his wartime experiences. The two bowed as Ozai declared the fight to begin, enabling Zuko to shoot Naruto with a stream of fire. Naruto just sidestepped it and continued on, sending a screaming arc of black fire across the floor, forcing Zuko to dodge. When he looked down, he saw how much more damage Naruto's flames could do to the steel floor than any other flame could, as evidenced by the fact that it was still licking the floor. "Do you still want to continue, Zuko?" "I'd hate to embarrass you in front of Daddy," Naruto said icily, receiving a ball of fire in return, which he put out as he sent a wave of fire that reached the height of the stands, forcing Zuko to retreat until he formed a sphere of fire that briefly protected him before dissipating, with Naruto holding a fire-made dagger to his throat. Much like his voice, the expression in Naruto's eyes chilled Zuko's spine. His father, who had been training Zuko for years since he believed Azula was a hopeless case because she had inherited her mother's traits, sat wide-eyed. With a roar, Ozai said, "I declare the winner to be Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze," as Naruto extinguished the flames in his palms and bowed to Zuko, who stormed off. Iroh gave him a solid slap on the back, and Naruto shrugged as Ty Lee, Azula, and Mai hugged him. Iroh looked at the floor and said, "I am proud of you, Naruto, but I must say I've never seen flames so strong except from a dragon." "How is that?" Naruto's hands and feet weren't even burned, but the flames were still there. Naruto shrugged and turned to face the females who were still embracing him, grinning. "I haven't the slightest idea really, uncle. I just think it's one of those one in a million things on how my flames are this way," he remarked. He grinned and continued, "You know girls, if I didn't know any better, I'd say you were feeling me up, Azula, my Ty Lee, I'm talking about you." They blushed and Iroh laughed. Naruto grinned as Iroh walked away, saying, "You never know, I saw your parents and heard how positively they talk about you, Naruto. You may just get a surprising result in the future." With a phony moan, he added, "I gotta say I am rather hurt you had so little faith in me winning against some pampered brat," causing Azula and Mai to roll their eyes as Ty Lee gave him a hug. She patted his head as his eyes widened and exclaimed, "Ah, I knew you could do it, Foxy. You two should be ashamed of yourselves for having so little doubt." He smiled like a crazy person as they all left the stadium, with Ozai watching in disdain and reflection. "Look at his aura, it's a dingy gray because of your doubts, shame on you both," she said, holding him to the other girl's ire. Time skip. Why in the world is the palace so enormous? In the middle of the night, Naruto thought, "I need a map just so I can get to the kitchen to get a glass of water," and he followed a faint flame. As Naruto rounded the corner, she turned to face him and he asked, "Ursa? What are you doing up so late?" As she hurriedly responded, I was just saying goodnight to Azula, she couldn't sleep so I helped her, and now I'm going to go back to my room." Naruto arched an eyebrow in response to the bag beside the door. The elder woman sighed as he narrowed his eyes and added, "And I suppose the bag is your laundry you forgot about?" "I'm no fool, Ursa, what's going on really? I can tell you're lying. Ozai exiled me from the kingdom. I was just visiting one last time to say goodbye to my daughter. Naruto, can you make me a promise?" she requested with a nod. "A serious promise on your honor," she continued, and he nodded as he stood up straight. "Don't tell Azula. I fear if she found out she wouldn't take it well, and until Ozai is off the throne she'll be better off, so please Naruto, until Ozai is gone could you keep her safe, for me?" she pleaded as he nodded. Sending him a note, she added, "Thank you Naruto, please give this to her when this is over and tell her I love her very much. You'll look out for her, won't you?" He laughed. "Of course. We Uzumakis never go back on our word. And since you're giving things to me, let me give this to you. This is for you. The scroll will transfer messages from the one you have now to me and vice versa. While the kunai acts as a beacon letting me know where you are, he said, reaching into his pocket and opening one of his many tri-pronged kunai before giving it to her along with a scroll. He wrapped his hand around the scroll and kunai. I pray to the spirits for your safety, Ursa. While Ozai kicked you out of the kingdom, Azula looked forward to spending some time with you. Now that you have to leave, she's going to be devastated. I just hope things will turn out better, for both of you. After nodding and kissing his forehead, she pulled her hood back up and hurried through the palace for the final time, causing Naruto to growl and silently curse Ozai for it. He then pocketed the letter and went back to his room, his desire for water no longer as strong as it had been. For heaven's sake, where the devil is this avatar, standing at the helm of a Fire Nation steamship? A black-haired adolescent thought in annoyance as she practiced her katas for her swordsmanship. She was dancing across the ship with a pair of dual Dao swords, their blades sparkling in the moonlight. With her recent addition of a burn scar over her left cheek, just under her eye, a reminder of her exile from her father years prior, the youngster exuded nobility and grace while wearing her sleepwear, which consisted of shorts and a blouse. She was banished when she was 12, and for the past 2 years, she has been traveling the world with her trusty friends in search of the boy who has been missing for more than a century. You know, Azulaheim, when the moon come up it's usually time to sleep, made her stand motionless, and she felt a familiar warmth flow through her as if someone were wrapping arms around her waist. She turned to find Naruto, her 4-year fiancé, wearing sleep pants, and remarked, I could say the same about you, ninja boy. According to her uncle Iroh, Ty Lee's parents and Mai's father approached him with marriage contracts to begin a relationship less than a month later. He accepted them without hesitation and showed them his love by showing them affection. Additionally, he revealed his background to them, which they took a while to accept until he created 3 clones that became them. They will ultimately have access to the power that was previously utilized by everyone when he marks them when they are ready. I know, but I didn't feel you in the bed, so I came to check up on you. Something on your mind? He murmured, kissing her neck and evoking a sigh. She breathed deeply and said, I can't help but feel annoyed. You know, when you told us that we were to assist the Avatar, I thought that we would run into him and help him. But so far all we've done for the past 2 years was travel the world with Uncle and not find hide or hair of the Avatar. I just wish he or she would show up. He was rubbing his shoulders and said, Azulaheim, all things happen when it's necessary. Besides, before we join I want to test this Avatar and see what he or she is like. We need to see if things go down we can trust the Avatar to do the difficult jobs. Come on, Haim. I doubt that the Avatar is going to show up tonight, he said, laughing as she nodded and yawned, understanding what he meant. He raised an eyebrow and shrugged in agreement as she approached his ear and asked, "Wanna bet?" He watched her shake his head as she huskily walked into the room and stated, "Good, and when I win the bet, since this is technically a new day, we have until midnight tonight until the bet is over. And when I win you will do what I tell you tonight." He laughed and said, "I love the strangest women," before joining her in the bed they shared with Mai and Tai Li. As soon as they climbed into the bed, they felt him in his position. The following morning, Azula questioned, "Naruto, where do you think he could possibly be?" As Naruto shrugged and turned to face her, Mai and Tai Li watching as his eyes went entirely purple, with 6 rings extending from the pupil and many tomo on the rings. Saying, "I don't know, girls. I'm sensing a strong energy and it's like a dull beacon, but I know he's here in the South Pole, but it's faint and drifting," he shrugged before jumping down. "Weak," Iroh stated as he approached and gave them some tea to warm themselves. Despite wearing their warmest clothing, they were still unable to combat the cold, and even Naruto had to wear shoes in these circumstances. Naruto nodded and said, "Yeah, I can't explain it, but I would guess that the avatar is either really old and his chi is fading or what?" My sighed as he flashed his eyes, which were only a faded purple tint with bulging veins on the side of his skull before the rings vanished. He narrowed his eyes and peered across the horizon as his eyes returned to normal after saying, "Or he could have put himself in a suspended animation 100 years ago." "Is the animation suspended?" "What is that?" I shrugged and asked. "Basically, you want to preserve something, you would freeze it at a low enough temperature to ensure that whatever is frozen will remain unchanged even though something would age or decay. In most cases something that's been put in suspended animation would prevent that, making it look as it always did," he stated. "So it's safe to infer that he couldn't be any older than us or close to that if he did it more than a century ago," Ty Lee nodded and said. "In the unlikely event that he would escape, what would we search for and how would we go about locating him?" Iroh said, forcing him to reflect. "His ethnicity is one of the most obvious indicators. Since his last avatar was Roku, this one would be an airbender, indicating that he existed prior to the nomad's onslaught." As a beam of light emerged from the distant horizon, Azula gave him a victorious smile that made his shoulders slump. The second factor would be that things would greatly differ from what he once knew. Places that were once well known will either no longer exist or have changed greatly, as well as the culture, he said. The words, "I win, dear husband," caused him to look down. Iroh chuckled before he could see where the light was coming from, adding, "That appears to be coming from the Southern Water Tribe," as Ty Lee giggled and I laughed lightly. "So, more ice and snow?" Naruto sighed in sadness as he replied, receiving a nod. As they headed toward the Southern Water Tribe, Naruto remarked, "I miss when the land was how it was before. Granted, practically every place was involved in war and senseless violence, but Yuki no Kuni wasn't this cold, or separated." "Tribe of Southern Water, Sokka, how do you know he's a fire nation?" "You're being paranoid. As they saw a bald boy sneeze and then take off, a girl with dark skin spoke to her brother while they were both dressed in heavy blue clothing. All I know is Katara. We know that Light might have told them where we are, therefore I don't trust him." He addressed his younger sister, who sighed in annoyance. "Please, Sokka, when did troops from the Fire Nation possess airbenders, much less a 12-year-old, she said, observing his attempt to justify himself before the youngster led her and her brother to his buddy, a sky bison. "Are you saying that this will bring us to our tribe, and if so, how?" Sokka remarked doubtfully as Aang smiled. "We'll take a plane there." "Yip yip, Appa." When the boy snapped the reins, the creature leaped into the air and then belly flopped into the sea. "Oh yes, so magical," was the sarcastic remark the dark-skinned boy couldn't help but make before his sister struck him. "Ship of Fire Nation, do you think one of your paths could conduct some recon, Naruto?" As he opened and created a clone that resembled him exactly, Azula murmured, shrugging, and gave him instructions. "You must go to the Water Tribe farther on." He nodded and grinned before jumping off the ship and sprinting across the sea. "The Avatar might be there, just maintain surveillance and make sure to let us know where he or she might be," he said. Iroh replied, "You know, I still can't help but be amazed by the abilities of your time," to which Naruto shrugged. "Believe me when I say that we were capable of more than just creating clones. It is one of the reasons I removed that," he continued with a sigh, "because the people in positions of power started corrupting everyone in some way until the rules that used to apply to everyone stopped for others, with children killing children, families being ruined. I put an end to that." "However, what caused you to end that?" Ty Lee sighed and scratched the back of his skull before asking. He remarked, assuming the lotus posture as he reactivated his Rinnegan, that's a story that I'll tell you all at another time. Trust me, it's a long one and there are too many parts. If I leave something out you'll be confused on where one part started and where the other part began. Using a Naruto clone. Naruto, I've arrived at the village. I must say that this isn't too bad. It's not like Yuki and Kuni from our time, but it's still pleasant. It's like a simple tribe staying out of trouble, he thought to his creator. The doppelganger gave him a mental shrug as he stood atop a snow tower before he started to perspire. Good, do you see anything or anyone out of the ordinary, he said. He saw the young boy soar around on a glider and said, well, aside from the enormous multi-legged bison, there's a little bald kid with a blue arrow on his head that matches the arrow on the bison's head. As the mental transmission was cut off, Naruto thought, okay, keep an eye on things and keep me updated. With all this ice, we'll reach your position in a day. He watched with a bored yawn. I wish I could stay on a warm, cozy ship, the clone thought, suppressing a sneeze with a sniff. Returning with Naruto, he opened his eyes and said, well girls, good news, the avatar is there. Downside, while watching through my clone's eyes we won't be getting to the tribe due to the way being blocked by ice. Even if me, Iroh, Azula and the other firebenders kept melting the ice we won't reach the land until midnight tonight at the least. Well, that is a bit of a disappointment. How do you know your clone won't be seen though? Azula sighed as they moaned. He answered, well, I'm not really worried, with a shrug. Since my clones possess all of my abilities and I'm trained in stealth, it's okay if they are instructed to remain hidden. She laughed and said, I suppose you make a decent point, but I just wish we could get there sooner. Naruto, her uncle, and Ty Lee put a hand on her shoulder and remarked, the Fire Nation wasn't built in a day, Azula, which caused her to roll her eyes. You all planned that one, didn't you? She replied, rolling her eyes. She moaned as they shrugged, and then she left to inform the captain about the ice. Iroh noticed that he had run out of tea, so he said, I'm going to prepare some more tea. Do any of you wish for more? They nodded and raised their cups because Naruto believed that Iroh's tea was the best thing ever and that neither of them would trade it for anything. Ty Lee questioned, so Foxy, what was the bet Azula was talking about? And Mai was as interested in finding out. Last night Azula was frustrated that we haven't found the avatar when I told her he might not show up from last night to tonight, and in the end I now have to do what she tells me when she tells me, he stated as Mai gave him a snort. She remarked monotonously, you know, for someone who claimed his luck was supposed to be legendary you seem to be pretty bad at betting, to her husband's mocking stare. She returned it with a slight smile, and Ty Lee laughed. When Ty Lee said, you know Naruto, the more you talk about your past, the more I wonder what it was like, he shrugged. It isn't all that glamorous compared to my time, especially with everyone being trained how to sneak in and out of someone's home in the middle of the night to take people's children or lives, he replied with a shrug as they swallowed. Azula hurried to join them and took a cup of tea when Iroh returned with more, sighing, the captain won't listen to me when I tell him that with the ice we won't be getting anywhere. Naruto raised an eyebrow and remarked, oh, really, he won't now? Naruto swiftly finished his tea and proceeded to the spot where the captain was asking the four of them to exchange glances. When Azula heard Naruto chew off the captain, they raised an eyebrow and counted down. I wonder what he's going to do, Azula said. When Naruto descended with a smile on his face, Iroh observed, it frightens me on how he can go from as nice as can be to as frightening as a pack of saber-toothed moose lions. The others nodded. All right. Did he decide against it? As Azula spoke, Naruto grinned. Naruto grinned and continued, yeah, you'd imagine what the right words can do to motivate a guy. Didn't you threaten him? As his and the others' stomachs growled, Azula replied blankly, causing him to smile. There was a pause before he said, "Who's hungry?" As they headed for the dining hall, the four were unable to raise their hands quickly enough. Using a Naruto clone, as he entertained the crowd, the clone thought, "Grr, I hate boss, he gets to stay where it's warm and I'm forced to stay in the middle of the damn cold with nothing to fucking eat. If he weren't me, I would roast him." As he sneaked into the Water Tribe's camp to gather enough wood to cook a meal, the clone thought, "I haven't even heard a single thing about him learning the elements, and instead the kid would rather ride some bloody penguins. If this is who is fated to save the world, we are all royally screwed." He took a bite out of his fish. "Yo boss, you there?" the clone thought, establishing the mental connection. "Yeah, I'm here." "What's your update?" he heard, grunting. "It's safe to say that this avatar is either irresponsible or he has a lack of common sense," he said, rolling his eyes as he observed the avatar. Curiously, the initial idea asked, "Why do you say that?" The creator groaned as the clone said, "He hasn't done anything to learn about the events that transpired, hasn't done anything to find out if there was anyone to teach him water bending, or has yet to leave to go to the other lands to learn earth or fire." As the clone smiled, Naruto thought, "So we have a child with zero experience in earth bending, water bending, or fire bending and only air bending to show for it despite being frozen in ice for 100 years, and he has no interest in learning the others." The original nodded before cutting off contact, and he thought, "I'll let you know if I find anything else out, boss." Dining room. As they finished their lunch, Naruto drew their attention with the words, "Well, that's just horribly disappointing." "What is it, Naruto?" As Naruto put up his Paisho table, Iroh questioned, causing him to yawn. When Naruto remarked, "It seems the Avatar isn't taking his job seriously," the others gave him curious looks. "Why is Naruto there?" Ty Lee asked, receiving a shrug in response. The others furrowed their eyebrows as he answered, "Well, he hasn't done anything to learn what's happened over the past 100 years, or if there was anyone around to teach him waterbending." "How about fire and earth?" Mai said, receiving a headshake. "He is also unaware of those. He hasn't done anything to leave despite being there for what looks like a couple of hours, so it would appear that he simply doesn't want to do his job. Instead, he is amusing the crowd with his air-bending tricks," he stated with a sigh. "To put it mildly, that is unsettling." "How can we encourage him to begin his mission?" Azula shrugged after observing him close his eyes. "Have him go find an earth and water bender after making him understand that the Fire Nation poses a threat to not just himself but also the other nations." He continued, "We can get you to be a firebender teacher for him when they come across Tsunade," and the others nodded in agreement. "But how are we going to accomplish that? We can't just sit him down and tell him, 'Hey, you have to take your job seriously or you're going to kill every innocent person,' you know." As they sat in silence, Mai murmured, shrugging. "Perhaps we launch a mock attack against the tribe? It's not my favorite idea, but at the moment, it's all we can do," he said solemnly, feeling depressed as Iroh sighed. "I mean, no strike to kill or injure, just cause some damage to the surroundings, make a few close calls, nothing more, as we push the people in one area while we cause some damage around us so the Avatar realizes the Fire Nation as they are will only bring more violence. This is the only thing we can do to let him understand how serious the situation is right now, as much as I hate the thought of taking innocent life." Mai, Ty Lee, and Azula faked to yawn as they stared out the window. Iroh added, "I agree with him, if we can make him understand then he will be more willing to take his job seriously." The others nodded. Azula grinned and added, Well, uncle, it's time for us to go to bed, and we can't sleep without our pillow. Naruto gave her a blank stare in reply as they pulled him from the room by his arms. Help oh the humanity, I'm being kidnapped by 3 gorgeous girls. What is a man to do? He murmured quietly enough for Iroh to hear. Oh seductresses, please show mercy just as you do kindness. Iroh laughed and shook his head as he watched the 4 leave the room while stroking his beard. I just hope those 4 think to keep the noise down, he thought.